have agreed that we can include his issue in the resolution. Jude, can you put it up? The detailed seismic assessment come back in June as well. That, because we'd need that in the June meeting.
Yeah, we'd have a preliminary report, but not the final. The final,
right.
We've been advised, will be maybe last week of February, first week of July. So the
Sorry,
final will be tight.
February.
Sorry, till June, July.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so if there is a change to that, then when you come back in April, you can clarify that for us. And councillors, then if it is that June has to be July, then we can deal with that in April. That makes sense, doesn't it? At least then staff can get underway and it's all going to come back to us in April. Are people comfortable? Andrew, particularly, you comfortable with that? Okay. All right,
So if that report is not available for the June meeting, June council meeting, is then the presumption that it would be available for the July meeting?
so that's what we'll hear in the April council meeting. Sean will clarify that in the interim period and we'll get a much better fix on exactly what their timeframes are. Apparently earthquake engineers are like hen's teeth. Understandably, I suppose. They've all gone to Christchurch, I suppose.
Particularly those who have experience with dealing with structures like theatres.
Yes. Okay. There you go. Right. So, unless there's any further questions for clarification, no other amendments.
Just one
Yes,
question.
yeah,
Is that sufficiently detailed to refer back to the options in here?
I think so. Is that
Okay.
clear for you?
I mean, we all
Those
know
are
it
the
is, but
options?
it is-
Yes.
Absolutely.
Staff say it is. Okay. All right. So I'll just, as I've moved, I'll just make some comments. I think what's important here is the April council meeting.
Okay.
Because what that will do is bring back to us a document that is in a form that the public can understand, and an opportunity then for the public to have a discussion about the future of Founders Theatre, and that essentially is what this is all about. So I think April will be a time, councillors, for us to have a bit more of a look at this and make sure we're comfortable with the time frames. We're not required at this stage to decide, do we want new, do we want refurbished, do we want Founders Theatre at all? We're not required to do that, and we shouldn't be doing that. What we need to be doing is making sure that people in our community and those outside our boundaries have an opportunity to give their views on what they think. We've heard some of them today. What I know is that this is a very sensitive topic in the community. Even people that probably don't go to Founders Theatre very often are certainly talking about it. And those that have been frequently to Founders Theatre have lots of stories to tell, and we heard some of those today, which I thought were quite delightful. But what I do know is that people are interested in this and they do want an opportunity to give their views on it. And for me, more importantly, I want to understand what those views are, because I personally think this decision does need to be made in a timely manner. Sometimes these things can drag on and on and on, and the reality is the theatre is closed, and whatever way you cut this, it's going to be at least 3 years closed. I personally believe that could have a profound effect on the cultural capital of this city. And my personal opinion is that that would be very, very unfortunate. We are a growing city, but more importantly, we are a large city in New Zealand. We do have a strong presence of arts and culture in this city. And it would be a terrible shame if we did not build on what has been done over the last decade or so in that regard. So this is interesting times for us. I fully support dealing with this matter timely. And I'm going to be more interested later in this process to look deep dive at costs and what designs are about and where, and should we refurb or not. For now, I'm wanting to get this moving and out into the public in a way that they understand. And look, I do want to thank, also acknowledge Sean and Chad and your team. I know you've worked very, very hard on getting all this stuff together. And Chad, I think your comments are very interesting. It's almost like the reports have followed the whole construction of the theatre. One report's led to another report's led to another report, and it's exactly how the theatre's constructed. But what's most important for me as a decision maker and for the public to be assured that we are getting the right experts to look at the right areas and understand the issues clearly. And that, I think, is a very important aspect, John. So thank you for that. So I'd encourage you, councillors, let's get moving on this. I think this is the right thing to do. Okay, who else would like to speak? Councillor
Just
McPherson?
briefly, Your Worship, thank you. And I agree with what you've just said. I'm reassured that with the emphasis you put on the public having a say there, because I think it's important we don't just see Founders Theatre as the arts centre of Hamilton or the Waikato. We see it as the cultural centre. There are many people living in Hamilton and living in the Waikato that have been to Founders Theatre, wouldn't have been necessary to what they would view as an arts event, but it is part of their culture, it's part of the region's culture. I remember going to it to watch something in its first year of operation. That's how old I am.
That's how old you are.
That's right.
It
Thank you, Gary. I think it's important that we really seek out the wider views of people. The arts community are well organised and will get their views to us, and we need to. They are very important, but so are the wider community's views on this, because this is something that we're going to be doing if we do it for all the community. Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers? Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, I think it's important that we establish a timeline. We're starting that on this journey now, that we have a timeline and that we stick as rigidly as possible as the reports come in and as the consultation process is undertaken, that we continue with that timeline. Personally, I would favour that this council makes a decision before October rather than hand over to the new council perhaps some notes and some ideas and a lack of decision making that this council may have failed to do. I think there's also a sense of urgency in giving the residents of Hamilton some idea as to what this council is doing in terms of either the future of the Founders or a replacement theatre. It's a significant asset for the city, not only as a theatre for the arts community, but also as a town hall. And even the smallest and poorest communities in New Zealand have town halls. I think too, and I think Sarah made that point in her presentation, we should not necessarily solely focus on the ratepayer cost of the replacement or the renovation. The present theatre was funded by the community, and I think creating some certainty to the community will bring the philanthropic groups, the community and business into the financing frame. So my suggestion is let's get on with it and let's move it with reasonable speed to getting some conclusions before the October elections.
Okay, any other speakers? Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I certainly want to acknowledge the robust commentary in the community, and that's very healthy in a democracy, and also our local paper, Mike Mather article on the Waikato Times, very, very good background to it, and also the list when in fact there has been quite a lot of work and a lot of attention to the Founders over the years, and I certainly am interested in experiences of other local authorities such as Dunedin, where they redid their town hall and the region theatre, and I'm going to be interested in kind of the point at which when they did it and how they did it. But Dunedin's a very illustrative example, and we can't be, sadly, a Dunedin that is valued and loved and cherished its heritage. We've lost a lot of our heritage, sadly. But I do want to introduce into this debate the notion of Founders being part of our heritage. And without wanting to give away my age, my parents contributed, obviously, with the community to it. The first thing I went to hear and meet, well, the Queen Mother and the great Dennis Rogers Mayor. That was my first episode. It must have been 63. The other interesting recall I can, and this is part of the,
Councillor Gallagher,
everyone has a experience. And I
Queen
also
Victoria.
vividly remember Keith
Elizabeth
Holyoake, the then Prime
first.
Minister, and seeking his assurance that he would win the election and the terrible Labor Party wouldn't be elected under Arnold Nordmeyer, and things have changed
So
a
what
little since
century are
then.
you in,
So
Councillor?
one's perspectives change. The issue to me, and I want to make it crystal clear, and I want to be clear, and I want to not be ambiguous, I admire the fantastic work of the creative community in this city. But just because, and I invite those people to look at the video, YouTube is a good thing. Go back to the February 2015 meeting. Myself, Councillor McPherson, other councillors were making some questions. We came to some conclusions, rightly or wrongly. One of my conclusions was the injustice of a person who lives in Frankton with a $400,000, $300,000 home, or in Dinsdale, and someone living in Tamahiri, Rotokauri, Cambridge, with a house that literally could be a multi-million-dollar house. And it is not just, it is wrong that they pay nothing for a regional facility. Now, raising that issue in 2015, and again Groundhog Day a year later, and I'll raise it again, does not make me anti the cultural capital of this community. So in that sense, I agree with Her Worship the Mayor and others to say that the Founders Theatre or its replacement is a crucial part of the tapestry of this city. And I've circulated to councillors a couple of articles about Tauranga, and the reason that I did that is you might have seen a byline in there. There's lots of great things going for that city, beaches and all of that stuff. The cultural capital bit wasn't. Unlike Rotorua, ironically, but the cultural capital wasn't. So that is, again, I would argue, a competitive advantage that we have over that. I also think it's very important that the council, without sounding to be defensive as to our record, through City News, re-promotes what we've actually done as well. So we've identified a gap. There is a serious gap because of the closure of Founders. Get that, and that gap must, in my view, by hook or by crook, be filled. But when you go to the, ironic I should say this given the name of it, but the Waikato Arts Centre, the Performing Arts Centre, and how many people, if you did a survey, would realise that this council, Hamilton ratepayers, contributed $2 million to the construction of that centre. You'd have to get a microphone and a microscope to look at some plaque to see you put some money in. And how many would realise that the ratepayers of this city every year for the past 10 years or more have contributed 25% to the operation of that very, very worthy centre. So this is where I think as a council we need to be assertive and out there just saying what we actually do. Just as we, I think, correctly assisted the Meteor and the Clarence Street in terms of returning those two wonderful to the community, etc. Didn't do quite as well on Riverlea, as people know my views on that. But the bottom line is, I agree with this motion, and I agree with the statements by the excellent contribution of the chair of Operatic Hamilton Opera, 100-year company, etc., so that now's the opportunity to look forward and to move forward. And I think there is a degree of momentum out there in the community that we want to actually get a sense, and as Councillor McPherson says, not just with respect to arts and cultural groups per se, but really to dive deep into our community and region just to see what form that this needs to take in future. I'll put my cards on the table. I think we will find...
I'll move an extension.
Sorry, I just need 10 seconds, sorry. We will find probably, if the seismic issues are sorted, the Founders probably still will be the way to go. But let me assure people I am very, very open-minded if there's some alternative, tangible, obviously, views that come through. There's a huge difference between a $20 million project and a $60 million project. This project must not be Claudeland's Mark II. This project must be, with respect, well-researched and well-funded. It must be regionally and nationally funded as well.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Yes, Councillor King.
Today I think it was refreshing to hear confirmation that those who want to be heard during consultation will be able to present here to full council around this table. That's the first time we've seen that for a long time. I think that was confirmed today to Councillor Gallagher's questioning So I presume that's how it's happening. So that'll be a refreshing change.
Right, any other speakers for or
I
against?
take it, Madam Chair, that's how you intend to run the consultation?
Well, what this resolution says is in April, the staff are going to bring back for our approval the engagement process. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor O'Leary?
Thank you, Your Worship. It's interesting to me that, in a good way, that art, again, in an election year, wins focus from the political wing. In 2013, the Meteor Theatre was that issue. And it is refreshing that in this chamber, certainly at the moment, I'm hearing overwhelming support for the first step, and it is only the first step. I believe, my gut feeling is that the consultation will come back and that people will want a new theatre. Why I believe that is that people like the new shiny toy. And I know that that comes with a price tag, and Councillor Mallett holds us to task many times, and rightly so, about the, decisions like this are easy to make when you're spending other people's money. So we are going to ask those other people how they want to spend their money. I think that including a survey is from an independent company is very, very good, because it is a major spend. This is the first step, and it will be controversial. As Sarah Nathan pointed out, it is an election year. And this is the first step. And like any community facility, I certainly wasn't around when the, I was alive, but I wasn't even remotely interested in politics when the stadium was born, and that was born out of huge controversy. I believe that when it was first proposed that the Hamilton Gardens, which was a tip, be turned into the Hamilton Gardens, that was also born out of controversy. So there is no doubt in my mind that everyone, as the Mayor said, everyone will have an opinion on this, and rightly so, because it is a community asset, and it is and will be, in whatever form that takes, owned by the people that live in this city and that pay rates. I do. I know this is the first step, and this is early, but I do urge those of us that will be tasked with making this decision, and I agree with Councillor Pascoe around. I believe we need to make this decision this year, but I also, before the election, I also wanted to remind everyone that, and I know Councillor Gallagher will appreciate this, that the Founders Theatre, when it first opened, was called the Founders Memorial Theatre. And I did a little bit of research in the weekend on some old New Zealand articles on that. And I think that we need, whichever way we go, we need to somehow capture and celebrate that, just like we did a few years ago when we celebrated the Founders Theatre's 50th birthday. So we need to keep that in mind, because that building was built by the community to celebrate those that go out and fight and protect the future of the people wherever they may be. So I strongly support this, and look forward to the 28th of April, the next step, and then going out to consultation.
Okay, any other speakers for or against? No? Okay, I don't wish to exercise a right of reply, so we're going to the voting board now.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is a report about the elections in October. That's item 7, page 158.
Is that what? Page number, is it?
Thank you, please. Franklin Plan again.
We the international, it's the whoopsie thing is next, isn't it?
You love bringing them in, don't you?
Welcome along, Dale. Welcome
I try
again,
me at
and
the
I think you were
election.
sitting there throughout all of this, so
Very interesting.
you saw the council in action on a very important issue for the city. Welcome to the council. And Jude, this is your report. Is there anything you wish to
Correct.
raise in it, or?
No, Madam Chair, just reminding council that I'm reporting through to the council today as your electoral officer. I'm appointed as the electoral officer and Dale Ofsofsky is my deputy electoral officer. So both here today to present a brief report with a timetable, a fact sheet and just one decision required from council today, and that is the order of the candidate names on the voting document.
And I see that you've made a recommendation on that, have you, or not? No, you've just said we pick.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, that's up to
So
council.
I might just ask, is there anyone who wishes to put a motion, and we might get... Oh, gosh, everyone's jumping. This is fantastic. Councillor Gallagher.
Well, what was the status quo? That was the pseudo, was it the one that where the computer rotated the random? Random, sorry, that was the other one that you draw it out of. Okay, well, I'm going to move to test that. Then it'll be 9.3, the random order of candidates' names. So I'm going to move that way.
That was last year, was it?
Just as what we did last time.
And that's seconded by the Deputy Mayor, right? Is there any other or any other amendments to that?
Can I just get a clarification on what random means? Does it mean if there are 25 candidates, every 25 papers would list one name at the top, and then or is it even more random than that?
It's each voting document is, the order is different, so it's a computer generated
So it doesn't move number one to number two in the next paper?
No,
It just
purely
selects them at random?
Correct.
So you could statistically end up with your name at the top of, not every page, but it could be at the top of more pages than perhaps Angela's name might be at the top.
Well, it's random.
Yeah. But it's unlikely.
It could be, but it's very unlikely.
Okay.
And just checking in terms of the budget costs, so the budget that's been allocated for this takes into account that random order cost, does it?
Correct, it does, Madam Chair. Last time there was a small cost to have the voting documents produced in random order, but this time there's no additional cost. That's correct, isn't it, Dale?
Okay.
Yeah, so no additional cost.
Right, so are there any other questions on this report? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Just in terms of the candidates booklet, it's been traditional to allow individual candidates to choose to repeat their English 150 words into Te Reo. Does that include Chinese or any of the other languages?
I'll leave Dale to answer. As the Auckland electoral officer, Dale's very familiar with the language.
Yes, it does. You can have 150 words in English plus 150 words in Maori, but you can also go into other languages, but it comes within your initial 150 words. So you may have 50 words in English, 50 words in Chinese, and 50 words in Korean, and then your 150 words in Maori as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. It's interesting to know.
Do you have a seconder?
Yes, I have a seconder. Are there any other questions, Councillor?
Just one, I did, oh, sorry.
Oh, the order in the candidate booklet is alphabetical, is it?
Correct.
Yeah, and that the statute requires that?
No, it's a practical thing because we simply can't produce it in the same order. It would be cost
costly.
prohibitive.
So I've got Councillor Leary. Did you have a question?
I just had a question because we
I've
did
got you,
do
Councillor Mallet.
random last time,
Yes.
and I don't really care which way we do it. But did we receive any complaints from people saying, look, it's difficult to find? You know, I mean, if we got 80 candidates, were there any complaints?
I didn't receive any, did you, Dale, for Hamilton?
I can't recall specifically for Hamilton, but generally there are some complaints, particularly if husband and wife are sitting down together trying to work out and vote for the similar people, and they can't find them, for example, but it's not terribly widespread.
Okay, councillor Young and then councillor Mallett. I've got councillor Young first.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I did ask you that question. In the candidate booklet, the first name comes first and then last name, right? Is it the last name come first?
Last name.
So it's the same as the voting paper?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. The last name comes first, but it's in alphabetical order.
That's same as in the candidate, the booklet?
In the booklet,
Yeah,
it's the first name and then the surname,
And
but
the
it is in alphabetical order
Yes,
of the surname.
But on the voting paper, it's Young, comma, Philip. That's the surname come
Correct.
first. So
Correct.
why you make it this way to swap around?
A good question. It's just the tool that we use to design this, but a very good
Because
question. We can
I
ask
did
that.
receive a couple of comments as why, is that, just example, Philip Young, people know. On the other hand, Young, comma, Philip. Why it appear that way, different with the booklet?
Good question. We'll get an answer.
Can we make it,
And I mean, just in response, I'm assuming if a council goes with alphabetical on their voting document, it would sort of have a certain logic to it, to have the alphabetical surname at the start of the column.
but if it's in random, it doesn't make any
No,
difference?
it doesn't make any difference
Yeah,
at all.
so
Yeah.
could
We'll
you look
follow
at-
up on that,
yeah.
just for ease of reading of the names.
Councillor
Thank you.
Mallett.
Very close to Angela's question. It is easier, presumably, if you know your people you want to vote for, it's easier to find them on an alphabetical voting list, isn't it? So there is just that slight degree of error that could creep in when people are, But anyway, so thank you, Angela. You
Yes,
basically answered my question.
we're aware and we've had that feedback previously as to a reason to go with an alphabetical listing.
Okay, no other questions? So I have a mover and a seconder on this matter. So can we do this on the voices? Shall we try? All those in favour? Are there any against? No. Okay, thank you, Dale, for coming down for that.
Thank you, my pleasure.
short matter.
Did you?
Right, councillors, next item, item 8, page 165. This is about an international visit. So Richard is not here, is he?
No, it's
You.
gone, your worship.
Okay. I'll second. Right, are there any questions?
No.
No? All right, so councillors, we've got a mover and a seconder. Can we, Jude's not back yet, so can we do this on the voices, or do you want to? Oh.
Aye.
Any against?
Go for it.
What do we do?
Right, okay, thank you, councillor.
Bring back some new Christmas.
Item 9, page,
You were going to have a battle on that one.
well, no, I thought.
Are you flying Kiwi Air?
Are they, are they?
Refueling.
China
Oh,
Airlines.
right, yes.
Very good influence.
Item 9, page 173, and this is the recommendations from the Strategy and Policy Committee. So, Councillor O'Leary, it might be useful to do them one at a time.
Yes, yep. So I will move them all, but item 1, the Heritage Plan and Historic Heritage Fund Guidelines, that council adopts those, I'll move that.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion on that one? All right, I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? We have some against, Jude, so now that you're back on board, can you just record those?
Councillors King and Mallett dissenting.
Thank you. Next one.
Yes, Your Worship, the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan and the updated plan and a list of the attachments, a list of those changes are attached. So I will move item 2, that the council adopts the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan.
Right, who's seconding that? Councillor Gallagher is seconding it. Did you have a question?
Yes, I had a
Yes.
question. I raised at the committee meeting, I support the plan, number 1. But number 2, forlongs are mentioned in several places. And I think it's crazy for us to send out a plan that does not reflect that forlongs have now made the decision to close. Now, what this would mean, if councils agreed that we should update it, is that on page 177, which is the timeline, the story of Frankton, we would add another little line saying Forlongs closure March 2016. a couple of pages over, and that's page 181, you've got some text that talks about anchoring the retail area in Commerce Street around Forlongs. I don't have a problem with that, but in the third sentence, is dominated by Forlongs, a family-owned, operated department store. We should consider putting that has been dominated by Forlongs, a family-owned and operated department store that closed in March 2016. And then I think there is, I think that probably covers the three mentioned. They're minor alterations,
Yeah.
but I think it would make us look a little silly if we didn't acknowledge such a significant closure of a 70-year dominant retailer. So I'm up to my colleagues as to whether I move that as an amendment and whether there's a second for that.
I'm just wondering if the move, or the mover of the motion could just say with appropriate, that the plan be adopted with appropriate amendments, and that would be.
In respect of
Appropriate amendments
Forlongs.
recognising
Yes,
Forlongs.
Forlongs, the changes for Forlongs.
Yep. I'll be happy with
Yep.
that.
So, yeah, I would be happy to include that, and I think if in that timeline on that page 177, if it can say, rather than just Forlongs close, if it can say after 70 years the family business, you know, something that's a bit more celebratory than just a
I'm just
straight
looking
back.
at Sean Hickey, who's writing furiously with this, so I'm assuming about this topic. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Good news. So you're picking up the gist of it here? Yep. Good, okay. So if we could just adjust that with the appropriate changes, picking up the Forlongs new circumstance.
So
Okay.
just a quick question. When this report is approved and goes out in some form, does it have the date on the front page?
It should have a date.
There's
by
no,
which it was
there's no
done,
sort of
isn't it?
provision for it, but I assume that if this got approved today, it would be March or April of 2016. So it's actually dated as a document?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
point. Yep. Okay, so Sean's got that as well. All right, so are there any other questions on this? We might put the board up now, Judy.
So you can pick up a report and
Okay, we're voting on this. Oh, sorry, councillor King?
most
Do
recent.
we speak to it?
Oh, yes, go. Yep.
I'm voting against this plan. It's another plan that we don't have a budget for. It's a plan that's going to sit on the shelf, I predict, and gather dust. We've got plans scattered now all over the city. Under this team, we've got 17 plans in place, which I understand. I don't think we've ever had anything like that many plans and policies and new things that have been brought out by one council with no budgets for, little budget for any of them. In my opinion, we took advantage of Frankton in the new district plan. We downgraded the rating, their zoning for the whole area, for a big part of the area, even although it's the closest commercial land that there is to the central city, and it made it a lot harder for people to do anything with their land. Now we've come along and said we're going to hang up some hanging baskets and some street furniture and some statues, and I think we've made it good. Generally, when council starts fiddling with an area like Frankton, and every time we have in the past from the 87 moving the streets over to the bridge, taking away car parks, making the footpaths wider, making the roads one way, the area, every time consistently that we've fiddled with areas, this area, the area has struggled and it has become harder in the area to do business. So I put this plan in the basket of fluffy ideas with great intentions of doing good, but we actually aren't going to achieve. We're going to achieve the reverse of what we're hoping to achieve. So I'm voting against this, and I urge other members to do the same.
Okay, any other speakers? Councillor Mallard?
Won't come as a surprise that I'm voting against this also. And the debate, the discussion we just had about Forlongs just highlights in neon lights the folly of central planning. It's a bit like the mayor of Hiroshima, oh, by the way, there was that nuclear bomb thing. This is huge for Longs. At least Gordon got it. Thank you, Gordon. I knew I could rely on you. You know, what Forlongs to the Frankton area is huge, is massive. And to think that we, sitting here in our little enclosed circle, didn't know that 6 months ago, and we could never have known it. There are lots and lots of things that are happening in our city that we will never know and we should never know, because it's just the organic way that societies and economies and the way people work. And we can't from up here dictate to another part of the city where the shops should be, where the car park should be. In fact, what we generally do is do everything we can to eliminate car parks, because we're trying to get rid of cars and get people walking and cycling, which is another fantasy story, but we've been through that one before. So, I mean, long story short, this is just an example of soft-handed central planning, and it's no more successful than the old-style Stalinist approach. It's just a lot, we do it nicer, but it's no more accurate. So it won't work.
Can't resist.
Councillor Gallagher. Oh, and Councillor McPherson. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Go for it. Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor, well, he was first, so...
I'm happy to yield.
Oh, right.
Happy to yield.
Okay. Councillor McPherson, go for it.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. I owe you. Unlike Councillor Mallett, I actually support the concept of central planning, but...
I know you do.
But...
so long as you're the planner.
Of course. But I also don't believe in having plans just for the sake of having coffee table booklets. Coffee table booklets are nice ideas. Wouldn't it be nice if we were able to travel there? Wouldn't it be nice if Frankton looked like that? Where's the money to implement any of these? And that's my problem, and Councillor King raised the same sort of point. I'm all for planning if it's achievable, and it's yet to be proved whether this is achievable. If we put out as the vision of a couple of councillors for Frankton, that would be fine, but I wouldn't see it as a council document, an official council document. Let's save that up as some background work for when we do decide to put some development money into that area. One of the reasons I do support some sort of planning and don't support the organic sort of business system that Councillor Mallett does is I'm reminded every time I see stories like how little tax many businesses pay in New Zealand if they come from overseas, and how little contribution they make to the country. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, Councillor Mallett. If New Zealanders had that sort of ability, we might to collect tax that we should have from places like that, this might be able to afford to build some of these nice-to-haves in places like Frankton. But we're not doing anything there. It's not a practical document, actually. When it becomes one, I'll support it.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I mean, I obviously don't totally agree or don't agree with Councillor Mallett. In fact, dare I say it, I think, was it Napoleon was one of the great planners. He helped plan Paris. And that's an example of a good planned city.
Did he plan for a moment... did he plan Waterloo as well?
Well, I don't... Well, there's some wins and losses, of course, as we know. But I don't for a moment put Hamilton in the category of Paris, and I don't think even with the brilliant council and brilliant mayor that that's achievable. But I do think the challenge that Councillor McPherson says, it's not just got to be a coffee table book. So, number one, this was a plan that came actually from significant... leaders and people and participants within the Frankton community. And I think Councillor Leary has made that point historically. Also, this is a very good guide to our staff and elected members in terms of our 10-year plan, annual planning process, as you pick away. This is, if you like, an aspirational visionary document, but even if you look on page 23, obviously there's talking around the cycle trail, page, another page, but it's here. And it talks about the, I mean, we're doing the stuff like the Western Rail Trail. That's going to be a really good boon. That's actually happening. Some of us want to eventually get a commuter rail back from Frankton Station up to Auckland. There's reference in there. So to me, I think we shouldn't be afraid of aspirational documents. I guess the challenge that my good friend Councillor Mallett would say is, where's the meat on the bone? Of course, it has to anticipate how market forces and how other things change over time. Personally, I'm really looking forward to the lake document, of which him and I and Councillor Green are working together on. I'm also looking forward to the Beale Cottage document, which Andrew King and I are working on, and also obviously the Hamilton East, which I think has got huge potential. But you see, what I want to stress, in all of those cases, we're not just operating in isolation. This is actually literally with us as elected members engaging genuinely with key members of the community to hopefully get a good outcome. We won't make Paris, but we might get a sense.
We'll make Frankton.
Get a Frankton. We'll make Frankton, yeah.
Okay, we've travelled around the world.
Yeah.
No one mentioned Venice yet?
Japan, Russia, Paris, and now we are to Councillor Pascoe.
Thank you. My only fear with this plan is that it will end up going nowhere. But if we have no plan, then nothing is achievable. And I think that this is a good example, as indeed the river plan has been a good example, that without the river plan, we would not have had a philanthropic trust front up with $1 million to help kickstart that plan. So this is a good example, that is a good example, and so is this of this council being the enabler of going out to that community, finding out what their needs, what their desires are, how they want their area within the city to look, to be developed, and that is essentially one of our most important roles as leaders, as enablers, is to get out there and get the ideas together. And whether it runs or whether it doesn't, then depends on the council working with the community to get the outcomes that the community wants. So I'm supporting the adoption of the plan.
Right, any other speakers? Yeah. Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. Look, I just think it shows a complete lack of understanding of some councillors around this table as to what the value of planning actually is. And, a coffee table plan or a coffee table book absolutely has real value. In fact, something to the tune of like $6 million worth of value to the city. So look, whether it's the Frankton plan, whether it's the river plan, as Councillor Pascoe has just mentioned, whether it's the bike plan, the playgrounds plan, the Hamilton Gardens plan, the fact is these are critical documents that not only show a vision, the direction of travel, the stakeholders are willing to put their skin in the game. And as I've said before, these plans have brought over $7 million worth of new money, not only to our economy, but to the tune of $7 million less that our ratepayers have to front foot. So that's 7 million good reasons why I think not only the Frankton plan, but good planning is good for the city.
All right, any other speakers for or against? Right, we'll go to the board. Frankton plan.
It's carried 10 votes for, 3 against.
Thank you. Waikato Museum, Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll move that the Waikato Museum strategic plan be adopted.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion on this? No? Okay, we're going to go to the board to vote on this thing.
Councillor Mallett dissenting.
Thank you. Cobham Drive, the bridge.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Forsyth. Seconded by Councillor O'Leary.
No, you're fine.
Yes, good. Councillor O'Leary seconded. Is there an orange one? Any discussion on this one?
I think there was, could I have clarification from the staff? As I understand, because there was a whole issue, we routed it through the council rather than it waiting till whenever. And that was the issue that Councillor King raised So that'll be covered in your 3rd of May report, have I got that
Yeah,
right?
so
Around
Chris Allen-
it was issue of access across Wairiri Drive.
The General Manager, I think, has well and truly got the feedback from the
Yeah.
committee meeting. Yes, he's nodding firmly to me.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay, right. Any others? We'll go to the board and vote on this one then.
Councillor Mallett dissenting.
Your Worship, I'm just concerned that Councillor Mallett's green button may be broken.
Right.
Dr. No.
It's only got one colour apart.
Well, he's never used it since he's been here.
The Russians at the Security Council.
So
during the
Councillor
Cold
Wilson, when we
Your
break...
Worship, I could find an appropriately qualified engineer to come in and have a look.
No.
Point.
Dr. No.
Avionics
I was
expert,
going
maybe?
to suggest to you that when we break for the evening meal, then they can look at his button. How does that sound? Right. Now, Ruakura trees, page 174. And it was agreed that, as you know, this is an agenda item in the public excluded, but I understand, Kelvin, yes, there is. A map, please come forth.
And to multiply these, the trees when there's
Is there some way to get that a little bit clearer?
I have got individual maps as well.
Might be useful, thanks.
Is this the one, last one?
Right, so this is just picking up on some articles, I think, driven out of the media about trees and some council queries about some trees. So I want to just, has everyone got a map?
I just saw the word Ruakura.
Right, we're looking at a map.
So we're looking at a map, thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Your Worship. So this was just to clarify some queries around the Ruakura variation and the location of trees and the impact and what Ruakura variation is asked for. The map that you can see on the wall there and in front of you, the dots, the black dots right across that area represent individual trees or clumps of trees. In that area there are around 100 odd trees or clumpings of trees. In the hand-drawn black line, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groupings of trees, which total around 30 odd trees in total within that black line. Within that black line, those are the trees that are in question. Anything outside of that black line is as it stands, and there is no desire or willingness by TGH at this stage to do anything with the trees outside of that black line.
Okay, so just to be clear, we are looking within the black line. That is the subject matter place.
Correct. Absolutely correct.
Right, okay.
So-
There's a lot of confusion about which trees.
Correct, there is. So to make that clearer to you, within that black line, what is, just take a step back in history, under our operative district plan, we do not have the trees scheduled in any way with any designation. Under the proposed district plan and from the submissions through that process, there were submissions by members of the community who wanted to have those trees noted by some designation. Therefore, under the proposed district plan, they are then, even under the current and operative district plan, they are then designated as scheduled trees.
Now, what does scheduled trees mean? Is
Scheduled-
that like historic classification?
Not, well, scheduled trees means that they are under the district plan process, and through the variation, there will be a further process by which an evaluation of the trees to determine what their designation will be, whether they're heritage trees or significance, is then undertaken. So that is the next step. But because they have been noted under the the proposed district plan, they are now what is known as scheduled trees.
Okay, so just to unpack that a bit more.
Yep.
In the proposed district plan, some trees within the black line.
Correct.
Not all.
Not
all.
Within the black line, there are two components to it, just to be clear. What TGH have asked for is that all of those trees within the black line will be removed from scheduled trees under the new district plan. So what's the variation? So all of them, they want to have that scheduled removed.
Right.
However, there will still be the process to go through the, what the evaluation of each of those trees are. The two green highlighted areas, which totals about 4 trees in total, is the trees which they are asking for to be removed under resource consent now to enable them to do stage 1 works.
And those trees are scheduled in the proposed district plan?
Correct. And at the moment, that resource process is going through process and there's been no determination yet made.
So just to be clear again on if they're scheduled, that means that they've been identified as having some value of some sort?
Correct.
Whether that be historic or species
Correct.
or whatever?
Correct.
And that therefore leads to a process that must be undertaken. It's not a discretionary process, it's a process that must occur.
Correct.
If someone wants to do something with those trees.
That is correct.
Right, okay.
So
That process is a resource consent type?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay.
And so there will be evaluation done tree by tree under that area to determine the significance or otherwise of those trees, whether it be by heritage, culture, species, size, whatever.
Okay, all right. So, are there any, yes, councillor Gallagher?
So just clarify, so that's a process, and where does that, there's an application, where does that obviously, we have a view, what is our input as a council?
So that, once the trees have all gone through their process overall, so you're talking about the trees outside of the black
The
line?
ones they're looking at cutting down.
So the ones that they're looking at cutting down, or the ones that they have asked for consent for, is in process now,
Well,
and
if
there'll
you're
be
asking for
determination.
consent, I suspect the chainsaw's not far behind, but I just want to work out, our position, obviously not politically per se. I mean, obviously, we'll have a range of views of our beautiful canopy there, but what is the process involving council?
So it's a usual
independent?
consent process, so the determination is going through now by staff. The staff may choose to use a commissioner to further make that decision,
And
as a normal land use consent process.
That is a
runs.
normal consent process as
correct.
opposed to being part of the variation?
Correct.
Yeah, so that needs distinction, isn't it?
But-
There's the
Yes.
variation going on, but this is going on in parallel.
Absolutely right.
Right, okay.
I'm just trying to think, because obviously, as a community individual, I will have a view.
Yes.
Quite liked an article that was in the paper the other day in the Waikato Times, which I circulated.
An opinion piece.
An opinion piece. It was a good opinion piece in my view, well written. But having said that, I respect that there's a process, and from a staff point of view, you're going to be guided by our existing district plan.
Correct, and there will be a process by which we will, and already this is will be underway, to determine the value of those trees and therefore how the consent will be issued. So we have provided and chosen a specialist arborist, and TGH are paying for that, and they are going through that process as part of the resource consent to determine the value of the trees or not.
There are other people, obviously the Waikato University campus, because that's right, borders, across the road, so there's an impact in sight lines, view lines, and also some residents nearby. Are they, obviously they're captured?
So as the usual resource consent process, the staff will make a determination about whether they should be notified or non-notified under the usual
And what's that determination? Because
We don't know that yet, that is in process now.
well, what does that mean?
What means that we are going through the determination about whether it should be notified or non-notified.
Well, as a member of the board, I'm highlighting, because I can't prejudge, significant community interest in these trees.
So let's be clear
Highlighting
about the
that
trees
there's
where the media, or the opinion piece pointed out that they worried about. We understand that the trees that are in question are to the left of the highlighted, to the black line.
Yeah.
So the avenue trees and the heritage trees that they are in questioning are not within that
Yes,
black line.
but-
However, a process will be undertaken by a specialist to ensure that that is
I'm
correct.
seeing the black line, right?
Yep, good on you.
I'm standing on the Waikato University campus. I regularly use
Yep.
it as you do for the walks and
Yes.
all that stuff. Look across there and
Yes.
have a good visual. It enhances our major education facility. What I'm trying to seek, and if I lived also in the residential area, some of the residential, the lifestyle, all I'm trying to do is making sure that they are actually, if you like, fully informed and that their views are sought, because I would have thought in terms of the dynamic of the campus, okay, it may or may not be of interest to them.
So under the district plan,
Yep.
the trees currently don't have a designation, so they are not protected in any way
Right.
currently.
Right.
Because of the proposed district plan, they will have a schedule and a process to determine how valuable they are, and all the issues you are talking about will be made. So through the resource consent process that is going on now, we're trying to do that for those specific trees to make that determination about whether they should be notified by species or because of significance, or whether they are just a tree. And that determination has not yet been made.
And you make that?
No, our staff make that.
Staff, you see, this is the issue, and look, this is around accountability, because we've got a bit of a history, you know, and I respect the law in this town planning process. We've got a bit of a history where we wake up and we read about it in the Times. But, you know, I'm just wanting to say, and this is an interesting one, because obviously I recognise the process, but I would argue on this table that there's very high community interest in this issue.
Take your point. However, the staff are undertaking and enacting the law and legislation as determined by the Wellington. The degree by which you want to enforce that or otherwise is set by a policy that you can enact here. We are following that process. So if we weren't doing that, I would expect to be held to account. We are doing what we're expected to do.
All right, I've got the Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Pascoe, Councillor McPherson and Councillor Mallett. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. So look, I understand clearly that in the green blobs, there's 4 trees.
Correct.
They're keen on removing.
Correct.
And then there's another 4 outside that area, but still within the black line.
Well, there are 36 trees in total, so that the dots don't necessarily relate to one tree, one
So
dot.
if you go to the far left,
Correct.
I counted probably 50-odd dots
Yes.
in that other block of trees. Has Tainui, or will Tainui, in their application, say that we would like to remove definitely these 4 trees, but we will commit to keeping the other 50, whatever it is? And then, is there any mitigation demanded by taking a tree out and replacing it perhaps somewhere else within that site?
So that, no, they haven't asked for that because they haven't asked to do anything with the trees to the left, to the far left.
Well,
But they have asked under the resource consent that they would do mitigation of planting of new tree. The determination by which, how that will then lay out will be determined by the significance of the trees through the resource consent process, and then the things that you are talking about will then be part of negotiation with TGH as opposed to Tainui Waikato.
I accept I'm talking about TGH.
Yep.
Just remind me where Innovation Park is. Is that the orangey sort of colour in the middle?
Correct.
And
Well, slightly up higher to that. So it's up, where you see the avenue of trees, if you like, the line of, that's where you drive up to Innovation Park through those avenue of trees.
Because that is a splendid
Absolutely.
canopy of trees
Correct.
going up there. So I'm wondering why we staff don't ask TGH for some guarantees over the bulk of the trees if the compromise position is the 4 trees and there are good reasons to remove those because of earthworks and piping and whatever else. It's really a situation of them indicating early, rather than to come back to this council next year, the new council, and say, well, actually, we think the 50 trees now are a bit of a bother and we would like to take all those down as well.
So again, to your point, that the point of negotiation can be a result of the resource consent under the first trees. What they do with all of these to the far left and up the avenue will then be determined by the designation of those trees as being significant for view sites or amenity or heritage or whatever that is, and that will then place on them a set of criteria by which they would have to go through to have them removed in the future. But to your point, that may be a negotiating aspect that could happen.
Because they could actually, after removing the trees, recreate them as carved po and give them back to the city.
That is again part of a negotiation
So just to clarify that too, though, the trees outside the black area,
These ones?
yes, all of those, so
Yes.
those are scheduled in the proposed district plan,
Correct.
right?
All trees are as they sit right now.
Yes, that's right. And their significance of scheduling is yet to be defined or
Correct.
determined. The arborist, etc., will say, is it because of species, is it actually heritage, in which case it might get a classification,
Correct.
etc., etc.
Correct, and we don't know that as yet.
No. No, okay, all right. I've got councillor Pascoe.
Okay, thank you. I suspect that councillor Chesterman may have answered part of it. Part of the question that I had was in regard to the protection of those trees that are called T74, which I think are the ones on the road down with Innovation Park being on your left.
Yep.
But have Tainui indicated any wish to remove those trees in that area and on the Ag Research Campus, which is presumably the back part?
No, they have not made any formal, and in fact, in informal discussions, they've said they see those as being quite a feature to their land.
Okay, well, okay, so they couldn't remove those trees anyway without going through this process?
Correct.
If they decided at some future stage to move those, they'd have to go through exactly this process?
So because the proposed district plan has them now scheduled,
Yep.
they will need to go through a
that
resource
process,
consent.
okay.
And sorry to interrupt, but and the strength of that process will be determined tree by tree, depending on their designation and classification.
Because if some of them were classified, once the arborist does all the work, as historic, for example, well, that'll make it...
That makes it a lot tougher, yep.
Yeah, and they are quite magnificent trees, those ones.
They are.
Now, just looking at the ringed area there,
yes,
I assume that the T80 trees are the argument that Tainui will be presenting is that they'll be bang in the middle of where their inland port's going to go, but T79 and T78 and T81 are quite different in the sense that they're close to roadways and probably won't detract from the earthworks that they want to do, or they could do the earthworks around those trees.
Correct. So
is that part of the argument that we'll be putting up?
So there's two arguments they're putting up. The green trees are under resource consent to be for removal for stage one.
Yep.
The pink trees within, or the pink highlighted area within, are simply to be asked, can they have the scheduling removed under the proposed district plan, because they don't believe that they will have any significance. We will go through a process to determine whether that is correct or not.
Okay, so there's two parts to the process.
Correct.
And while the T80s look quite practical for the removal, there may well be different arguments around the other pink area trees.
So we know that of the trees here in the green, we know they are a group of horse chestnuts, a redwood, an oriental plane, and a group of holly oak. So we know that level of detail, how they would be designated under different criteria. We haven't had that work done yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Let's be clear here. Those people who've followed TGH's history, and it really is important to distinguish that from Tainui, because Tainui, left up to them, I don't suspect would be involved in this sort of activity of certainly removing significant trees, significant with a small s, not trying to use the RMA term yet, but TGH very much will be, and they did up at north at Te Rapa, and you can, I will lay you odds, I have a bet with anyone, that this will not be the last application to remove large trees from that precinct, if you can call it that, in that area. This is the first cut. Dealing with TGH on any of these sorts of issues is like death by 1,000 cuts.
So, Councillor McPherson, question.
I'm just warming up, Your
I
Bishop.
can feel that.
It's a long
so let's
it's a long
focus on the question, then you can talk about
Are
that.
you aware that TGH has a history of dealing with these issues bit by bit in a piecemeal fashion and never providing the overall picture until they're finished drawing the picture? In other words, I think, sorry, I'll go. You said it's to the Deputy Mayor, and answer the Deputy Mayor's question, that you felt that the negotiation over the T74 trees staying could be part of the thing. How can this council ensure that it's part of the discussion? You know, what can we do here at this meeting to ensure that our representatives go into the negotiations that you mentioned with TGH, seeking that outcome?
So from this meeting, very little. From the process that then rolls out under the variation, so once we go through the process of finding all the trees in a designation, the council may set a policy to enforce that in some way other than just the RMA. So again, to my point to the councillor was the staff are enacting the legislation. The degree by which the staff enact that legislation, whether it's high, hard, light or small, can be set.
So
Yeah.
TGH, are they not involved in some of the appeals against or action against the proposed district plan?
They have, and all those bills have been
So-
settled that they're involved with.
Okay. But that could be strung out for quite a while. In the meantime, as Councillor Gallagher said, the chainsaws could be warming up right now. And, you know, in other words, the application, could it not, for the removal of the T80 trees, could actually have an outcome allowing the trees to be chopped, could have, before we ever get to the point of being able to negotiate over the other trees?
Well, that's assuming they put an application to the other trees. But
So they haven't done.
They haven't done
The
that.
application relates to those trees, 4 trees, is it?
correct.
In the black area?
No, my question related to the point that the Deputy Mayor made. He was, if I haven't got him wrong, was basically saying, could this council not, as a part of the discussion about the T80 trees and our input into that discussion, the resource consent application to remove them, could we not say, well, we're seeking assurances from you about your future intentions over the T74 trees?
I think you could do that once you knew what the designations and the basis by making that decision was, once we've done the done the studies of each of the trees individually. So,
but that's not going to
coming.
happen until after the T80 tree decision's made.
No, well, that's because but there's been no decision made or no request made for any other removal of the trees. Apart
No,
from
that's not the point I'm making.
No, but I think what Councillor Pearson is saying is that is this the thin end of the wedge,
Yes.
and you know the floodgate's going to be open. So what the council, I think, by reading the mood here, is seeking is what assurances are we going to have that this is going to be dealt with quickly, that we can, if councillors are minded to, what protections can we put over those sorts of trees? I don't know if that's where we'd land, but I think we need to understand what other options are there. At the moment, what I'm hearing is they're in the district plan,
Correct.
but their specificity in terms of the scheduling has not yet been determined.
Correct.
That process is underway?
It is underway.
Is
So we will
underway.
be starting that process once we've made the variations of heard, and we will move through into that as we go down the
Right,
down
so
the route.
bookending the time frame on that is what? Is that a year? In a year's time that'll all be done? Is it? No? It's
No, I need to
months?
come back to you. I don't have that.
Okay, but it's not like 10 years?
No, not at all. Because it would need to enact to allow the district plan to be inoperable.
Right, and then can I just ask, then you said earlier, then on top of that, once that's done, the council could, as a policy position, strengthen that. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Right.
Sorry, Your Worship, that was not the question I was asking, though I appreciate that can be done. I'm asking what input this council can have in the form of negotiation discussion, because when applications RMA applications come to you, you sit down with the applicants and do have discussions, especially when there are discretionary issues like notification and the removal of the designations that are currently in place. So you have those. So what can be done now along the lines of what the Deputy Mayor talked about, what can be done right now, not waiting until we go through and do the investigation of
And
each
that's
individual
right
tree.
now on the trees that are the subject of the application?
We've got some leverage,
Yes, yes, I get
potentially, now.
So
Because your staff are going through the process.
They go through the
I think what
process
I'm
now.
hearing here is, what can this
Oh.
table do?
So you've made it pretty clear what you would like from us, I think, in terms of finding out what the intention is over the wider master plan of those areas. Whilst this is going through the current process and we determine whether it's notified or non-notified or otherwise, at the end of that we will be able to have a negotiation with TGH around their works, and we may be able to pick up how that then affects other parts of the trees and what their master plan is. To strengthen our position in that, though, bringing forward the work so that we can actually identify which of these trees are significant by whichever designation it is, would put us in a strong position to then have a greater negotiation on that.
Sure. So a question I asked you earlier offline is it possible to view the T74 lane, I think it's called Ruakura Lane actually, as a mini precinct rather than an individual trees? In other words, the avenue of trees rather than that tree and that tree?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, because these are groupings themselves, so the dots don't necessarily relate to individual trees, but collections, trees or species.
And is that a variation to the district plan then, or can that just be put in?
I need to go back and check that out with Luke and Deborah. Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, I had one other question in relation to the T80 trees. Is it possible to discuss with Tainui alternatives to their plan of bowling them all with a view to them working around some or all of the trees in their construction?
Certainly, I mean, and that would be part of the ongoing discussion now around consent. So if that was a direction you'd like us to take, we can go and see whether that would be possible or not.
Just as an alternative. But the last one, I suppose, is to do with notification, which Councillor Gallagher raised. Has Tainui, TGH, submitted to you that there should be non-notified, their resource consent application?
We're going through the process now to determine what that is. I can't recall, actually. It's not here. I can't recall what the actual application says.
Because that's an issue that we often find our staff going along with the high-powered planners that put in applications for TGH. It's quite difficult to resist that pressure unless there's some counter-pressure coming.
My understanding is that because all the trees have been scheduled under the proposed district plan, they don't have a choice. It must go through a consenting process in which we make the decision about whether it's notified or not.
That's what I mean, yeah, but have Tainui, you can make the decision and Tainui can submit, TGH can submit to you, but otherwise it should be non-notified for X, Y and Z reasons.
I haven't looked at the individual notification, what they've requested, and our staff are going through the process now.
Because it may be important for the residents in the area and users of the area, that immediate area, that they have that visage of trees. I don't live out there, I can't comment on that, but I can imagine hearing some of the previous comments about the whole development that people would be concerned if there's some very large trees in T80, if some of them were being bowled and they might want to have a say. So, and I would hope this council would err on the side of at least giving them a say, or arguing that they should have a say. Of course, the RMA determines things in the end, but we can put a position, can we not?
Well, that's what the district plan, when it's operative, will have, so we'll have that in the future. We currently don't have that now, so we're working through it as a resource consent land use normal process to determine that.
If you determine as you work through that, it's notified, then everyone gets a say.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. So that is it.
But it's not de rigueur that it's notified. It may or may not be the result.
Yes. No, that's right.
Correct.
That's correct. Okay, Councillor Mallett, you had some questions.
Yeah, just my understanding is that we are the governance body here. We set the rules, and they are articulated in our district plan, whatever iteration that is. Now, you may or may not agree with the rules, but we set them. Our other responsibility is ensure those rules are carried out and honoured properly. And I think that's exactly what Kelvin's telling us. We're going through the process. And I'm just concerned that it seems to me like we have decided that this rule doesn't quite fit what we want. So we're trying to put our finger on the scales and alter things. Now, hang on. I just don't know why this has even come here.
Point of order. Point of order, Your Worship.
Yes.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is that under the rules, the RMA, staff have the authority to decide, in this case, whether the application is notified or non-notified. So the point I was discussing, at least one other councillor, was around that discretion that staff have under the rules, not outside the rules.
Yeah, so that wasn't a point of order, but let's just getting back to it. I think, Councillor Mallett, what's happening here is for some councillors, this issue is very important to them. It may not be to you, but to some.
It's extraordinarily important to me, but from the other angle.
But what I'm saying,
I don't think we've got any business at all telling people what they do with their trees. But anyway.
No, that's right. So what I'm saying is, for some councillors, it is important. So what I've heard from the general manager today is there's a process. We're working through it. We've signed off on a district plan that's got these scheduled trees in it. They're going to be identified on why they're scheduled. And some councillors are saying, well, you know, is there anything we could do to strengthen that? Others might have a different view. And I've heard the general manager, no, there isn't. We're going through the process.
Okay, so mean, people might disagree with the law, or the rule, whatever it is, and that's fine, but then you change the rule or the law and you try and get a majority to do that. Or you might be concerned that Kelvin's crook and he's doing something wrong, or crook, incompetent, or you've overlooked some things. Well, TGH are just doing what they
Okay.
do. Yeah. So I just concerns me that we, to an outside observer, this would look like, how can we stick it to TGH? Well, not how can we stick it, but how can we take away, how can we change the process somewhat so we can get an outcome when Kelvin's telling us clearly he's following the process? And that's all we can ask him to do, isn't it?
Well, Councillor Mallett, that's exactly what he has confirmed, but I just need to remind you that it's here because the majority of councillors resolved to bring it here. Now, I don't know who it was that said this is what's going to happen, but that's why it's here.
Yeah.
It doesn't just materialise.
Well, can I
out
ask a
thin
question of
air,
you
it's
then?
here. So that's why the topic is here.
But I could be incorrect, but there's a delegation that's gone through. So aren't we just breaking through that delegation and ignoring that?
Well, no, I don't think there's no suggestion we're changing any rules here. My understanding is that at the strategy and policy meeting, it was resolved by majority vote to bring this topic here. That's what's happened. And now councillors are asking Kelvin questions about the process, what's happening, what trees and how does it work. And some of them are taking licence to express personal views.
Can I ask
That's where we're at.
point of clarity? Just
Sure.
so we're not in, obviously we're not in pink.
No.
We've plucked something, part of something out of pink, which is this is the documentation we've got, and that's it.
No, so
No, I don't think that's...
that's not quite correct. So that option out of pink is talking about the nomination of individual commissioners around the district plan appeals.
So where's the report?
So that's what was in there. This didn't have a report. This was simply an item that you wanted some clarity around trees and which trees, so that there was a consistent understanding of the trees that came from an opinion piece in the media, as I understand it. And it was thrown on as a late agenda item to the S&P. We didn't get to it. It was referred to here.
Right.
So there's nothing in our white papers, is there?
Correct.
There's nothing in it, and this is what we've got.
Correct.
And then we're discussing that one item out of the next.
Correct.
Yeah, and that only. Thank you.
Right. Any further questions? Councillor Gallagher,
Are you
sure
aware
it's
or
a
are you not
question?
aware whether
Oh,
the University of Waikato is aware of the trees at T82 and T79 and T81, and have they expressed a view?
No. No, I'm not aware, because we haven't gone through that process to make that determination on who we should notify or not.
Would you suspect that, given their campus vision and their campus design, they may have an interest in terms of some of their sightlines to their campus?
So we are
on
in a
their
process,
campus?
and determining on the process, we'll make the decision about who we notify or who we don't. And by answering that to you now, I would be influencing that.
That's all right. Are you
Right.
aware of community concern on this issue?
Yes, you would be blind and not to.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, that's enough about trees. I don't think we need to do anything, resolve anything here. The resolution just simply said that the committee resolved to refer this item to the council, which I understood was to update us.
Well,
Correct.
yes, Your Worship, what sort of
Yeah, no,
future
no,
updates are we
so
going
I'm
to get?
just getting to that. So there's nothing that needs to be done based on this paperwork.
Correct.
Does anyone have anything they want tested?
Yes, I'd like to ensure that we have future updates on this, because there are some RMA processes to be gone through.
Yes.
And Gary may not think we have any business in that, but some councillors do think we have at least in the business of getting information about what is happening under our jurisdiction.
So, General Manager, as I understand it, the practice is to notify the councillors of, applications, etc.
Correct.
We get that as a standard thing?
As we do through the councillors' update, and this would also form part of the usual Ruakura variation full reports which you get through.
Right.
And so we will ensure that that is part of those reports.
Okay, so make...
So, Your Worship, I'd be happy to move the report be received
No.
and that further updates be provided to
Sounds
appropriate
sensible.
committees or
Yep.
council.
Sounds sensible.
I'll second it.
So we're receiving the verbal report and that further updates are provided to the appropriate
I'm happy to second that.
committee. I think so. I think it's committee or it'll be council.
I think it is council.
It's council, yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favour? Any against? No? Okay, thank you, Calvin. So the next item, councillors, is the submissions. This was the late item. And this is item 10.
Regional Council.
Now, the agreement here was that the draft would be circulated, that anyone that had any comments on this was to send those back so that any changes people wanted could be visible to all and could be picked up. Now, as I understand it, no one has provided any feedback on this or asked for any additional information. Okay, so in that case,
I'm happy to move.
moved, seconded. Right, so I'm going to,
Yes, Your Worship, I've got one particular issue which was raised both the last two times. I didn't think needed to be raised again. That's in relation to the decision-making over the use of the money from the fund. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the fund.
Cool.
no, I thought you asked that question of the Chief Executive at the committee meeting, and he said that that issue from this council was raised at the Mayoral Forum meeting. That's what he said? What else did he say about that?
I thought there was an expression that we would like to have a say in future, and I guess variation changes from what's already made. It's not clear in there that we say that. It talks about the history, but not about who might have a say in the future if there's a change proposed.
But as I understand it, this is a proposal for, that we're supporting the option 2, which is a proposal for a defined amount of money to be allocated in a defined amount to defined groups. It's not going to be a put your application in and we'll decide. Have I got that right?
That's right.
Yes, is that right?
That's correct.
So there is
Defined
actually no...
amount or just the defined groups? I thought it was
amount,
just the
wasn't it?
defined groups.
Defined amounts and defined groups, so that's what's been clearly identified and...
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not open for, submissions or debate, so to speak.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yes.
And so the follow-on from that is if there is any change proposed, it comes to us as well as the other
I
councils?
guess it does.
That's correct.
Okay.
Didn't they write, I think they wrote that, didn't they?
There was something written in the documentation that actually, if there are any changes, that would come back and that would have a contribution.
So
or
perhaps
discuss
just for
that.
clarity's sake, we should add a sentence in that says that, any changes to the way the fund is applied, our council expects to be consulted. Okay? I don't think anyone would oppose that being added. Right, any other questions on this? Okay, we're going to vote on this. All in favour? Against? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, that's the end of the public agenda. I'll move that we go to public exclusion.
What happened? Did I miss an opportunity?
Councillor Mallett is seconding the public excluded. All those in favour? Against? Right.
Your Worship,
Yes.
just before you take the agenda,